Welcome to King of Catan, episode 11. My name is Treeckosaurus, I'm the creator and host of King of Catan. And for this episode we have the grand finals for season 2 between myself, Nuke X, Mpiccolo and Kinsey. And I'm joined by DylLighted today to commentate the series with me. Thank you for joining me, DylLighted.
Thank you for inviting me. And this is a really interesting board where there's only two good ore where there's two good ores, the 5 ore and the 10 ore. And then there's a 11 ore at the very bottom. And there's around 3 good wheat spots. I see the 5, 8, 10, the 6, 4, 11. And then potentially there can be another person on the 6, 3, 11 wheat right there. So this is definitely a very interesting board. I think whoever gets on the 5, 8, 10 is in a very strong spot, especially since they have the strong ore, the strong wheat. And since the 8 wheat will not likely be shared for a while, since no one will build directly on the 8 wheat for their first placement. So the 8 wheat is a strong spot because it won't be shared. And whenever a spot isn't shared, that means it's targeted less. So I predict the 5, 8, 10 will be a very strong spot, whoever gets there.
Yeah, certainly agreed with that. And I also like to look at what is the most rarest resource, or where will be the most demand for it. Like the ore is 5, 10, 11. Those are okay numbers, but it's just 3 of them, and it's not like these crazy often rolled numbers like the 8 or the 6. So you don't have that much ore in the game going forward. Also, the same can be said for brick. And also because it's in a cluster, that also means that there is less brick in the game. So that also means that lumber is less valuable during this game. And that is really something I look at when making my initial settlement placements. And that is also a reason why I think the 8, 5, 10 is a great pick, because there is so little ore in this board. But I also think the 9, 5, 10 is really good, because when there is more lumber than brick, the player who has the most brick is in a great trade advantage, because players will look for brick. And you also have a great chance to pick up longest road if you do so. So I also think that's a really strong spot. Let's see what the players will go for. What do you think of the 9, 5, 10 picked by Kinsey?
Although I think the 9, 5, 10 pick is a very strong pick as first position, I personally would go on the 8, 5, 10. I think the 8, 5, 10 is stronger is because it's just not only more production, you get the rare wheats and you get the wheat port. But the biggest reason why I think you have to take the 8, 5, 10 as first position is because you're leaving it to second position, and that puts second position in a very strong spot. I think that the fact that you can get a wheat port or the wood port with the best wheat and ore as first pick, if you leave that to second pick, they're going to get an even stronger combination with that, which is why I think you have to almost play defensively and choose a 5, 8, 10.
Yeah, certainly agreed with that. I would have taken the 8, 5, 10 as the first spot, but there are certainly arguments to be made for the 9, 5, 10. Like I said before, the rare brick is key in this game, I think. And also because the sheep port and the 5 sheep is there. I think the sheep port, well, looking aside the lumber port, also close to the 8, 5, 10. The sheep port is better than the wheat port, because the sheep is a resource you tend to have more of later in the game, and you're looking more for wheat and ore. And that's why you can trade your sheep in for those resources, and that's something I really tend to value in when I'm looking at what ports I use during the game.
I certainly agree with you. You want to be able to port your more useless resources. It's an often common trap for longest road players to get the brick and wood ports. And the issue with that is the fact that you're porting your own win condition away. Whenever you port your wood bricks into ore wheats to try to get cities as the longest road players, you're destroying your own longest road potential, and you're not furthering your win condition, which is a common trap, and that's how you often lose longest road or get it sniped by the ore wheat sheep players, which is very dangerous.
Certainly, when the road players get cities, they're dangerous, but that also is the case for when ore wheat sheep players get easy roads.
Yes, I agree.
So now I'm making the second settlement placements. Like all these players have won their semi-finals, which you can see on the channel as well. Links will be in the description. I had a relatively one-sided game in which I had more ore gain than the other players. So something that I try to prepare for this game by looking at those semifinals and okay, what are their playstyles, what are the things they value. And for me, the values is I think Orvi cheap is the strongest strategy, but I also try to look at how will the resources during the game interact with each other, and how will the trades happen during the game before a settlement is placed. And that's something I learned from Mpiccolo, who won his semi-final against you. So yeah, he's just a really good player, which I've learned a lot from as well. I decided to go for the 8-5-10. I think we're pretty convinced that this is the best spot. Is there a spot that you would consider as a spot to not go, a reason to not go for the 8-5-10? Probably not. But if there was a spot that would have that situation, what would it be?
Nah, truthfully, that's sort of a hard question, as I don't think you can really not take the 5-8-10, as if you don't take the 5-8-10, you let third position have it, and you let them have an even stronger combination that goes with it. But if you're forcing me to choose something besides the 5-8-10, I think I'd consider perhaps the 4-6-11 at the very bottom with the OR.
I think I agree with that. I also think the 8-3-10 is not that bad of a pick. It doesn't get it with the 8-5-10, so pretty straightforward. And also because these two boards around the 8-5-10, and they also synergize with the resources you get from the 8-5-10.
The reason why I think it's also the 5-8-10 is so strong is because as an Orbeat Sheep player, you don't have very much road potential. So having close ports and having good expansion spots is very, very strong. And that's why as an Orbeat Sheep player, you want to taking the ores that are close to the coast. So let's say in this case the 5 ore and the 10 ore. Just taking spots that are around the edges are very strong as an Orbeat Sheep player, because it gives you spots like one road, like a road settlement spot, which is very, very easy to do compared to if you're the Orbeat Sheep player trapped inside the middle. That's often a common mistake for Orbeat Sheep players. They take the Orbeat Sheep, but they're trapped inside the middle without any ports, and that's how they become. That's how they become the dead player who locks largest army but can do nothing else. That's why you always want to play sort of near the coast as the Orbeat Sheep player. And that's why another reason why I think the 5-8-10 is so strong. It gives you easy expansion spots, which is critical for the Orbeat Sheep player.
Oh, that's really interesting. I hadn't considered that, but I certainly look when I'm playing Orbeat Sheep. I look at what are my third and fourth settlement spot will be, and they don't necessarily need to be good spots. I just need to play some settlements down. Like I need to get to 10, like the Orbeat Sheep will carry me through the game, and I will have options if I build the cities and settlements correctly. I just need to have the options to build stuff. I think this building closer to the coast will certainly help with that. Okay, going forward, Nuke X. He is picking third, which is considered the most flexible spot. What do you think is the spot he should take now the 8-5-10 has been selected?
I think as third position, you have a lot of interesting options here. I'd first like to say that although it's widely considered third position is the most consistent spot, I think my personal opinion is that I disagree with that, and it's very, very board dependent. As especially as you play more Catan Universe boards and you see crazy picks like 5-6-9 Orbeat Sheep, or in your case the 5-8-10 Orbeat. I feel like that when you're presented with random boards, there's a lot of the times third position being the most consistent is thrown out the window in my opinion. Because if you put on a board with this 5-6-9 Orbeat Sheep, you obviously want to be first position to get that. Or if on the contrary, let's say like if there's two strong or wheat spots, then I would personally want to play as second position, since there's not only the potential for first position to screw up and not take the better or wheat spot, with leaving me that. If I'm second position, I can take the second or wheat spot, have everyone else locked out of or wheat, and then I can get the better wheat sheep spot or sheep whatever spot that goes with it to help me play my game. So I don't always necessarily agree that third position is the most consistent.
I agree with that. It's widely considered to be the case that the third player is the most flexible. However, I certainly agree with you that it's very board dependent. For example, on this board, I think there are two killer spots on this board, and that being the 8-5-10 and the 9-5-10, which have been picked. So that gives me the well, one of the best spots. Like, fourth player is also really, really interesting. That also, especially playing online, when certain players don't see a very strong spot, you're very likely to have a really, really strong strategy going forward because they didn't get a really good spot, and then you can make certain strategies, but that's not really the case for this game because players will certainly take the spots they want.
A cool tournament strategy that people do is that if you scout out your own competition, let's say you're going to the finals and you know that their player B is very, very weak. So what you want to do is you want to know where player B is going to choose their positioning, since in an actual qualifier tournament, you get to choose your positioning if you make it to the finals. You get to choose first, second, third, or fourth position. So if I know that player B is very, very weak, then I want to place right behind player B. And the reason why I want to place right behind player B is because so they can make their mistake, like choose a bad settlement spot, and then I can capitalize off of it and take what's actually supposed to be taken.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
And then I can get the better complementary spot. So it's actually better to let like the bad players go ahead of you first, which is in my opinion, I guess it's sort of sad that a bad player can ruin the game, but it's also you have to use that to advantage.
Definitely. And you can also, something Mpiccolo told me, that he tries to get, like, he doesn't value wheat that much in selecting his placement because he knows he will get it from the dead player, the player who's behind in the game. That's just something I find interesting because he knows he can just generate a lot of resources and still get the valuable resources by knowing how these trades go down. Well, let's have a look at what Nuke X decides to do. Will he go for this 6-4-11 on his board? There are a couple other spots that I consider as pretty decent. I think the 3-8-10 and the 6-4-3 at the top are interesting. And also building on the 5 OR. What do you think Nuke X should decide to do?
I personally don't like the 3-8-10 that much. Even though it is the OR, I think I personally enjoy the 6-4-11 a little bit more. And the reason why I think I like it is because you have some strong spots that go with it well. If you get the 6-4-11 at the very bottom, you can get the 5-4-11 at the top, which complements the 6-4-11 very well. Another complement that goes well with the 6-4-11 is a 3-8-10. That's also a very, very strong combination. And because you know that if you take the 6-4-11 at the very bottom, Kinsey is not going to take, fourth position is not going to take the 5-4-11 and the 8-3-10. That doesn't make sense. So you can take the 6-4-11 at the very bottom with the confidence of getting the 5-4-11 or the 8-3-10, which are both strong complementary picks with the 6-4-11.
Let's see what Nuke X decided to do in this case. He's gonna go for the 5-4-3. Let's see where he will point his road. Okay, he's saying, okay, the 8-3 is still open. The 5-4-3 is a spot we haven't really touched on, but building on the 5 OR is pretty interesting since it is the best OR gain. However, I do think the 5-4-3 doesn't give that much production overall, unless you can get, well, pretty good wheat. You should be able to get the 6-3-11, I think. So that might be good enough to justify taking this. But then I would have maybe pointed my road towards the brick board.
I think the 5-4-3 is an alright pick. But once again, as third position, you always have to choose where fourth position will go, or at least predict it. And I think in this case, if you choose a 5-4-3, it's pretty clear that fourth position, well, as fourth position, I personally would take the 6-4-11 with the 3-8-10. I think that's a pretty strong setup. And because I like that setup, the 6-4-3, 8-3-10, I'm pretty sure fourth position would also take that. Now, once it rotates back to you as Nuke X, knowing that the 6-4-11 and the 8-3-10 will be taken, what's left for you? What's your plan? Assuming that the bottom, the 6-4-11 and the 3-8-10 is taken, what is Nuke X's plan? Since he clearly intends to build on the 8-3, which I think would be like a strong setup, but is that a strong enough setup? Would that beat Mpiccolo setup? Would that beat Treeckosaurus setup? A lot of the times, people will place in a way that guarantee them like a decent setup, but I often ask myself, is this setup good enough to beat everyone else? Since the game isn't to just do decent, it's not to get to 8 points. The game is to win and outpower the other 3 players. So oftentimes whenever I place a settlement, I'm like, is this worth this calculated risk? if this plan does go successfully, can I win? That's why I think that like there's a lot of unnecessary times where you should not go or read sheep, especially when it's a weak enough setup.
Definitely. If there aren't great numbers for the Orby cheap, don't go for it. Like then
Yes.
it's a trap. This situation might be the case for that because the 543 gives very little production. It might be a trap building on the 5-4-11. I do really like him trying to say, okay, I have very low wheat on this, but the A3 is next to me, I can get there. That kind of makes what I said before, the 6-3-11, not as strong as I thought it would be, because you don't need that much wheat going forward. Players like Mpiccolo is guaranteed of great wheat. Treeckosaurus, myself, is guaranteed of great wheat. So then you would have to say, okay, there's no wheat left for Kinsey and we can trade with her. So that would be interesting for that.
Yes, I agree. Even though I think the 5-4-3 isn't that bad of a pick, I personally would choose the 6-4-11.
You could go for the 9-10 to go with it. I'm not sure if that really does it. There's also the 4-8 below. We can't really see what board it is. We had it figured out at a certain point, but there's the OR port and the 3-1 port. Only we can't say for sure which one is the OR and which one is the 3-1 port.
So something I would like to point out is that, once again, whenever you take a 2-hex spot, so what I mean by a 2-hex spot is a desert or a coast spot, since you only get 2 times producing. I don't like doing this as 3rd and 4th position. And the reason why I don't like doing this as 3rd and 4th position is because it gives more space on the board for other people. So when you, as 3rd or 4th position, take a 3rd and 4th, or take a 2-hex spot, like a coast or desert spot, that gives so much more space for your opponents behind them. So you have to ask yourself, is taking this spot that's better for me, is it good enough that I can leave the rest of these spots open for everyone else? Hence, remember, your actions have consequences. If you place on a weaker spot, you give your opponents the much stronger spots. This game is not just you who's playing. It's not one-dimensional, but rather you're playing with 3 other players, and people fail to understand that a lot.
Yeah, certainly. I'm just looking at what opportunities does NukeX have to create a winning strategy, and I don't really see any. Claiming a bunch of brick and hoping others will trade the lumber with you, that doesn't really make sense. Maybe we could see the 6-4-3 or the 6-4-2 or the 9-4-2 to go with that.
I think if I was in NukeX's position and I had to really choose, if I was stuck with the 5-4-3, some edits I would make to his positioning is I'd point my road inwards or downwards as a 5-4-3 and in my attempt to get on the 5-11 ore, and then place my second settlement on the 6-3-11. So that way you have a little brick, you have like brick you can trade, you can double up on your ore, and you still have sheep. You're going to be trapped inside the island with no ports, but at least you have a better chance for playing ore wheat sheep.
Yeah, and you still have the potential to sneak up road, so that would...
Yes.
So you have the chance for double win condition, which is difficult to do, but certainly a possibility if you play it right. I don't think when you're in voice chat, I tend to not go for it because other players will point towards the other players. Hey, he can get longest road, let's get it before him, and then you're out of one of your win conditions and you don't have the production to cover up for it. But yeah, I like your edits on that. That makes the possibilities NukeX has with his second settlement a lot better in my opinion. Okay.
Yes, I agree.
So let's have a look at Mpiccolo's spot and road pointings. Mpiccolo decided to go for the 6-4-11 and the 3-8-10 in a respective order, picking up the free road with his second settlement, so I like the order for sure. You pointed out the 6-4-11 and the 3-8-10 is the combination you would make.
Yes, so I agree with his picks. I think those are the correct picks.
I really like the fact that he recognizes, okay, there's not a lot of ore on this board. I'm gonna double up on ore. Also, I gain all 5 resources, which makes my curving through the game a lot smoother. He also has pretty okay balance within his game. Like the ore wheat sheep ratio is actually pretty good because 10 and 11 still combine as 5 dots, wheat is 5 dots, sheep is 3 dots. I think that's a pretty good Orvi sheep balance, and the brick lumber balance is a bit off, but especially because you can get the board below, and I'm going to assume this is the 3-for-1 board because he also had the possibility to pick up the sheep board, and picking up the free road would put him in a great advantage in a race versus Kinsey. So a 3-to-1 board would make more value than the orb board, so I'm gonna go for the 3-to-1 board is the below the 4-8.
So my thoughts on this spots is that even if the 4-8 was an orb port, I'd still go into 4-8 because it's just so massive production. You have a very, very strong you have a very, very strong third settlement spot that provides 8 points of production. And what I really like about Mpiccolo's setup is the fact that he has split ores, and having split resources is very strong. The reason why I think having split resources is very strong is because if you block the 10 ore, he has 11 ore. Even if you block the 11 ore, he has the 10 ore. So that's why I really like having split ores or split resources. It just inherently makes you harder to block. There is a website that's dedicated to competitive Catan that talks a lot about strategies, and their number one rule that they emphasize is being unblockable. And having split resources is one of the ways to be unblockable.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Being unblockable is something, yeah, like you try to go under the radar as long as possible, and when you're unblockable, or when you get blocked less during the game, players will put less attention on you, and also you can just work your game plan a lot smoother. Something I don't really like pointing my road towards the 4-8 is the risk you have of me taking the 4-8.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty good spot, especially considering the lumber port being nearby. If I get the 4-8, then I have pretty strong Ori cheap, and also a lumber with a lumber port. And so that's something that might be risky for Mpiccolo's placement. I would still do it, because going for the sheep port doesn't really help you that much. And also that means if the 4-8, well, considering no one takes the 6-3-11, okay, that's probably not something that's going to happen, because Kinsey would take the 6-3-11 probably. Okay, yeah, I guess you still gotta do it. Okay, let's have a look at where Nuke X is gonna go.
You placing on the 4-8 is the fact that if you place on the 4-8, that it makes 2 more spots of yours very blockable. So right now, if you place, let's say if you decide to place on the 6-3-11, your blocking spots is the 6 wheat or the 5 ore. But if you place on the 4-8, now the blocking spots become both the 8 wood and the 4 sheep. And just being blocked all the time like that is not always super strong, I guess.
Are you really scared of having the 4 sheep blocked? Like, it's not that much of production, and especially if you have the lumber port, it's, well, not that bad. And if the 8 lumber gets blocked, the 5 ore is open. I agree with you. You probably get blocked all game long if you take it, but you also have the options for Mpiccolo limited, which is...
Yeah, that's true. It hinders his setup quite a lot. The thing is, whenever you get blocked, is that there's also a chance that you get stolen from, which is what I dislike, which is why I try to avoid being blocked, or place in a way that makes it difficult for people to block me. Or that's why I always emphasize, like, I try to table talk it to a spot where I'm not on it, so I'm not even an option to steal from. But you're right, placing in the 4-8 would hurt Mpiccolo's game quite a lot, and that is very, very important.
Definitely. Also taking the 3-to-1 port. NukeX decided to go for the 4-9-2, which gives him some options, especially if he is able to get to the 6-2 with the 3-to-1 port. He will be, and to get to the 8-3, then he'll be able to pick up all 5 resources quite effectively, and he has the best ore and the best brick gain. No, lumber and the best brick gain. So, and his settlements are quite close to each other, so he has a great case for the longest road. And with a 3-to-1 port, he can convert his strong but at a certain point useless resources into ore and whatever he needs. So the con about this placement is the lack of production. A big pro about this placement is that he has a lot of potential if he gets his spot, and that's something I think Nuke X is hoping for me to go to the 4-8 with either the with the port, and so Kinsey will go to the 6-3-11, and then he has a lot of space available for him to do great things. But if I go for the 6-3-11, then Kinsey probably won't go for the 4-8 because he wouldn't pick up any weed. Then Nuke X is in a lot worse spot. So it's either Mpiccolo is in a difficult spot or Nuke X, and possibly Kinsey is in a worse spot, depending on what I do. I think the 6-3-11 is fine, and the 4-8 is fine as well.
I think I'd personally take the 6-3-11, and the reason why I take the 6-3-11 is the same reasoning as why you should take the 5-8-10, is because you can't let the person in front of you take it. So now, if you let Kinsey have the 6-3-11, and they're going to be able to get on the 5-11 shared ore, and they're going to be able to get a lot of the brick, which can be traded away, and that they're going to be able to play just a really strong ore beat sheep game, and that's just sort of just allowing yourself to have another strong ore beat sheep competitor. And the other big reason why the 6-3-11 is the correct pick, in my opinion, is because look at where you force Kinsey to place. She's not going to place on the 4-8. That doesn't really make sense. She can, but by placing the 6-3-11 yourself, you either force Mpiccolo to be screwed by Kinsey placing on the 4-8, or you force Nuke X to be screwed by placing on the 3-6. And that's exactly what happens. She decides to punish Nuke X and go on the 6-3, making it race for the 8-3 wheat.
There's also the possibility for Kinsey to have gone for the 12-6, and then you have a lot of space around you available in the 9-12, the 9-10. That's something I didn't consider back then, which would put you in a decent ore read cheap game, but your ore gain might be too low to justify that. So it really depends on whoever wins this race between Nuke X and Kinsey. And now Kinsey rolled a 7, so something I tried to do as much as possible during this game is table talk whenever a 7 rolls. And whenever the 7 rolls, you gotta recognize their game plan as well. Like Kinsey is gonna go for the race with Nuke X, so I'm like saying, hey, I might be in a strong spot, but hey, you're in a race with Nuke X, you should probably rob him to win the 8-3. Something we did during this game is that we told each other about what resources were robbed during the game, because the players who play on the mobile device have an advantage over the players who play at Steam or the PC app. When a certain resource is robbed, certain players can see what resource was robbed. That's I guess a bug in the game. That's something we try to fix in this way. Yeah, quiet opening turn by me and Nuke X, as we're unable to do anything, and the trades don't go down. As the 3 rolled, which is blocked by the robber. Mpiccolo is giving the information here. He has lumber in hand. He doesn't say what I want for it, and that is, at this point in the game, everyone knows each other's cards still, because the settlements have just been placed, so he can just easily track what cards everyone has. And he trades with Nuke X for the lumber for the sheep and builds the road to the 4-8.
Something that I find really interesting in people racing is the fact that whenever people are racing together, you can really, really get a high price if you track all their cards. So what do I mean by that? If you know that they have 5 out of the 6 cards to do road settlement, and you have the last piece, but they have like 4 extra cards in hand, you can really, really demand a lot. You can demand, like, I want 3 cards for in order for you to complete the road settlement. And the reason why you can demand so much is because, if they don't get the trade, well, then they're going to lose the race, and that's very, very bad. So that's the reasoning why to me that's the reasoning why it's very, very important to like track when other people are racing. Even if it's not you, you have to know what they have so you can get your strong trades out of it. That's why I always emphasize track people's cards so you can not only get strong deals, but you're more aware of what's going on inside the game.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the 8 rolls. Bit unfortunate that we couldn't get the cards from the recording player, which was myself in this case, but we will try our best to look at what cards are in the hands from the players, if possible. Like for example, now the 8th rolled, so there was a wheat picked up by myself and lumber picked up by Mpiccolo. Mpiccolo is trying to build a settlement and he is offering lumber, so then he would be able to build the settlement on the 4-8 or get the development card. He still has that ore in hand, so that's something players could look for. As Kinsey rolls another 7. Let's see if he decides to block Nuke X this time. Interesting.
So another interesting thing about racing is the fact that you can really try and talk to your opponent who's racing. So a lot of the times, let's say if there's a crazy 569 or beat sheep player and there's 2 dinky road players who are just racing for a settlement spot. Well, the issue is that when there's 2 dinky settlements, or when there's 2 dinky little like road players trying to race for a spot, is the fact that the road players, whenever they roll 7s, they'll go after each other, and that's not what you do whenever there's a super strong or sheep player. So if I'm in a situation where I'm that road player and I'm racing with someone else, I'd say, listen, I don't want to be stealing from you, as we should already be targeting the strong overweight sheep player since they have such a strong advantage over us. There's not much we can do. And if all we do is tear each other down, then we're just going to let this strong overweight sheep player destroy us. So I talk to the person like, hey, how about we create a truce that we don't rob each other and we just rob the overweight sheep player. However, we'll still be racing for that spot. So oftentimes that will work, but oftentimes it won't work and they'll be like, nah, I don't want to. I'm still going to go after you. But sometimes you just have to try and at least make that attempt and establish this overweight sheep player is going to destroy us if the road players don't work together and like properly target him. And that's an issue with newer players since they don't understand that even if the overweight sheep player doesn't have any road axes, they're still very, very, very strong. And you have to target them even if they're tied in points. But the dev cards can be very deceiving.
Yeah, you play a game on two fronts you play chess on 2 boards. You try to win the race and you consider that you need to still be in the game to win it. So you're trying to win this race to get in a better spot. And if you allow the strong or cheap player to not be robbed, you're gonna lose anyways. It doesn't matter who gets the spot. So that's something you try to evaluate as much as possible when in a race and deciding to block someone. So Mpiccolo got some good trades with Nuke X here for sure. And that's something I didn't like to see, because whenever 2 other players are making trades, that means I'm missing out and I am not as actively developing my game plan as they are. So that's why whenever I'm playing Catan, I'm just looking to get as many trades in early game as possible until there's a certain point that you don't want to trade anymore. But
yes, agreed. I feel like whenever people, if you look at Nuke X and Mpiccolo, well, the brick is very rare for Mpiccolo, and the wood is very rare for Nuke X, so they're natural trading partners. But that's an issue for you because they're both getting their rare resources, and it's an exchange, and they're both developing their games and getting rare resources. So that's why you're right, that is a very, very bad trade for you to see that happen.
Okay, this is really interesting. And Mpiccolo decided to block Kinsey at the 5 sheep. He had more options for this, but decided to go for the 5 sheep. Is he saying with that, Kinsey, I don't want you to be in such a strong spot, but I don't want to block your 6 lumber that much? I'm not sure why he blocks the 5 sheep.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that reasoning either. I probably would have blocked something different, but we don't have Mpiccolo here to explain his reasoning, so whatever.
Yeah, okay. 7 rolled by me as well.
I'd also like to point out that whenever the 7 rolled earlier, Kinsey had to discard 4 cards, and the 4 cards that they discarded was 2 ore and 2 wheats, and that was very, very painful as they're super close to the city.
With a 9/5/10 available, in most cases I would try to hold on to the cards to build the city, but also considering that you're in a race with Nuke X, I guess you need that A3 because you don't have enough wheat to sustain a strong or cheap game, which you probably want to do considering you have the 5 sheep and the 10 ore. So that's something I'm evaluating as well when deciding to go for a block here, as I decided to block Kinsey. And with that, I'm trying to intervene in this race as I build the settlement at the 5 ore. So I'm saying, okay, I want Nuke X to win this race. It's probably better for me. As he does, okay. Because Kinsey has such a strong Orby cheap, and I think Kinsey is well, if she got to the 8 wheat, she would have a strong Orby cheap, and that would rival my or wheat game. I'm not sure about this.
You're right. I think that the thing is that whoever players does go on the 8-3, it makes their Orby cheap game a lot stronger since they're both lacking the weak wheat. Since if NukeX gets on the 8 wheat, you can still play Orby cheap pretty strong. But if Kinsey gets on the 8-3, they can both also get very strong. I think that the hidden boss behind all this is actually Mpiccolo, since these two players, they're just getting targeted racing for each other. But I think Mpiccolo actually has a really strong but sneaky setup.
Like, he's off the radar now completely. Whenever there's a rob going on, it will be against me because I was just able to build on the 511, allowing me to double up on ore. If the 5 rolls with the amount of wheat I have, players will instantly look at that and target me for that. And Mpiccolo is just casually getting some development cards, still having a spot available, having possible to get army and road, and that's really strong. And also having great spots to build cities on. Really like what he's doing.
Yes, I agree.
As he builds the road towards the sheep port, which will, like, Kinsey just got her ideal spot blocked, so she is considered the dead player right now. Well, not really the dead player, but the player who is in a weaker position than others. So we will now all try to get trades with Kinsey. That's a possibility for her. As she trades with us, she is still able to get back in the game. She needs to make this trade, well, to have a chance of winning, and we can take advantage of that by just making some good trades with her, as we can establish our lead over the other players.
Something that I think I do disagree with what Kinsey did was that she played a road when she didn't have that many cards, and I think that was an unnecessary road. So yes, although you want to get closer to the 8-3, but you also have to recognize how close Nuke X is to that. And I personally don't like committing to the race unless I know I can win. So in this case, I think I would have saved the road as Kinsey's spot and not play anything. The golden amount of cards you have in your hand is when you have 2 settlements and you have 4 cards, and you're on all different numbers, there is no way for you to 7 out. Because if you think about it, if you have 4 cards, and if you theoretically get a card every single turn, then when it comes back to you, you'll only be at 7 cards. So when you're at 4 cards, I don't think when you're at 4 cards and 2 settlements, a lot of the times all you want to do is hold and see what your options are inside the future. So I think as Kinsey, I might have not committed my road to that race and instead just held it, especially if Kinsey knew how close NukeX was to the road settlement.
Yeah, definitely. As she knew, Nuke X got some trades in with Mpiccolo. Ooh, and Mpiccolo recognizes Kinsey is now the weak player. Let's go for this trade, and as he gets instantly rewarded for it, Kinsey is able to build on the sheep board. That's fine for everyone, but it still means she is a player that could potentially win the game, especially if the 5 starts rolling a lot. The other 5 will be blocked. Yeah, like 5 is such a key number for myself and Kinsey right now, and also for Nuke X, because he got the wheat with the A3 wheat. He should be able to, if he gets ore, easily either get development cards or cities, and I think he needs some cities right now because he doesn't have as much production as the other players do.
Yes, I agree with that. You right now is in a spot where if you're in low production, you need to have cities to boost it up so you can actually compete with other players. It doesn't matter if you have more points if your production does not match the other players. Also, another key subtlety that I'd like to mention right now is the fact that the 5 ore is blocked, and Mpiccolo has 2 development cards. So if Mpiccolo can keep the 5 ore pin, then he's in a very, very strong spot to take largest army.
Yeah, as we have no clue what development cards Mpiccolo has in his hand right now. I'm assuming here that I'm trying to get a city at the 8-5-10 as fast as I possibly can, because getting a city there will boost my chances of winning, because it's such a high producing spot and on such key resources with the ports available for me. I wonder if I should race with Nuke X to the wheat port first, or go for this city, or do something entirely else. What are your thoughts on that?
Interesting thought, but I think I might have done the interesting decision and not have gone for the 511 first. So although that seems weird, since getting doubling up in an ore is very, very strong, the reason why I would not go on the 511 first is because, and instead I'd choose to go on the 8 wheat port first, is because it's because you're not in danger of losing the 511. The only person who's going to potentially get the 511 is Nuke X, but the thing is, Nuke X is racing for the 8-3. So I think if you got for the 8 wheat port, then that would allow you to secure the 8 wheat port, and then you'd be able to get on the 511 as you get more flexibility. And I think building on the 511 makes the 5 ore a very, very big target. You can argue that if you build on the 8 wheat port, now the 8 wheat becomes a very strong target. But the thing is, you still have the 6 wheat at the very bottom, so it makes you more flexible. So I actually would have done a little bit like an opposite thing of what you did and build on the 8 wheat port and then build on the 511, since I don't think you're in any danger of losing it. Also, the 8 wheat port just allows you to port for your sheep to start your dev card game, as you're already a little bit behind of Mpiccolo. But that might not matter if he goes too far ahead and your only option is to go for longest road.
I certainly agree with that. That's something that didn't come to mind when I played this. Certainly, I really like that. I'm not sure. I had a reasoning why I needed to go to the 511 first. Maybe I was afraid of Nuke X's road. Well, he has the potential to build many roads at once.
Yes, I don't disagree with that. He can also snatch it up, but to snatch it up, he has to get 3 woods, which I think is quite difficult for him to do. Yeah. And I think his first priority is probably trying to get to the 8-3.
Great. Something I might have been afraid of is that he would get to the wheat board with the 8 wheat, like what built one road more, but that doesn't really make sense at this point.
Yeah. I don't know why he just hoped to get a city. I don't. But let's see what he does on his turn, if that makes sense at all. Since when someone's at 10 cards, you have to sort of think about, like, what are they trying to do? And because he did that trade, it allowed you to get a 4-for-1 for that city. And I think that was a really dangerous trade. And if Nuke X doesn't do something quite strong himself on this turn, I think that trade was a mistake.
Yeah, let's see if he can build that settlement. I'm going to assume he doesn't have the ore available now. This 5 ore has blocked to build a city.
Yes.
So his 3-1 port is quite strong for him. I know during this game there was table talk going on all the time in a really, really friendly way, but that was something that influenced the decisions players made for sure. So that's something you gotta keep in mind when watching this game for sure. So when looking at this die stat, we see that the 5 hasn't been rolled a lot and 8 has been. So that means there's a lot of lumber and wheat in the game, and not that much ore and sheep.
So, interesting thing, but even though Nuke X was able to build a settlement on the 6-2, I still think giving you a city on your turn was too strong. Nuke X gave you a wheat, and I think he got a wood, which is a rare card for him. It lets him build a settlement. But I feel like you getting, like, forcing you to just to pass at 10 cards and like saying like, listen, I'll do it on my turn, not his turn, it'll put a lot more pressure on you. And I think I would have just, if I was in his spot, I would either say no to the trade, or I would say I'll do it on my turn, because you can't give someone a city on their turn. I think that's way too strong of a mood, even if it does give you a settlement. And the 6-2, like, although it's decent, like, compare that to what you're giving to purple, which is you, the 5-8-10 upgraded, and that's very, very, very strong.
I certainly agree with you. Well, we both have a Hearthstone background, so we know what we mean when we talk about tempo. If I see this correctly, is that I make a bigger tempo swing in the game than Nuke X does by building my city compared to this 6-2 3-1 port spot. tempo is something I define as the stuff that you're able to do in one single turn. I certainly agree with you that the 8-5-10 is a stronger play than the 6-2, but that also might mean that I am more of a target than Nuke X is at the moment.
That's true. That's very, very true.
So it might be a smart under the radar move for Nuke X. Let's have a look how the players will value the spots that have just been taken. I can also always make the argument, okay, Nuke X has way better road potential than me, because he now has the lumber and the brick. Guess I still both have them, but my numbers for the lumber is a lot worse than the number for Nuke X's.
Although that's true, if you just count up the production points, you have 6 points of wood, and you also have 6 points of brick, which is ultimately a lot stronger than Nuke X's. And you're right, but on the surface level, it seems like, oh, he has better wood brick. But if you just add up the math of production, just like raw production, you do have the better wood brick than he does, which is sort of funny.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I didn't value the city enough, definitely. Because if this 10 roll, you get two lumber. Okay. So a 9 rolled, which is crucial for Kinsey, as he is now able to build the settlement on the 3-1 port. Which might be really, really useful for her, as she wants to convert her brick and wood into wheat or ore.
I think right now I would actually start going after Mpiccolo. When he has 3 development cards, yes, he might not seem that scary since he has 3 points on the board, but 3 development cards is very, very scary. You rolling the 7 is very important, as your 5 is critical to your game. And if you don't have the 5, and if you don't have a wheat port, your game is sort of like quite stifled until you get to one of these ports. Especially since Mpiccolo has 3 development cards. That's very bad news, as the 5 ore might keep on getting pinned. And you need the 5 ore to be open, as it gives you like instant city. Since the 5 ore plus the 8 wheat, that's an instant city. Yeah. Personally though, right here I would try to block Mpiccolo, as I think he's flying under the radar and can be very, very strong, since he's going to have a lock on army. And if one person has a lock on army, then it forces the other 3 players to fight for road. And that's not a very, very good situation, as you don't want to end up with like a 3-way road battle, since that can get very, very expensive, while the army player just sort of sits comfortably with all his development cards uncontested, with the win condition already locked.
Yeah, okay. You were right on the fact that the ore port was the most right one, and the 3-1 port is the left one. Something I try to do when I am in the spot of the ORVG player and the others are really trying to do the road, I try to fuel this race, like saying, oh, you gotta take road and stuff, and like actually trading some resources in to make them spend their stuff on roads, because at that point in the game the roads don't really do anything for you. You're just building them to get the longest road, and that's while I can get cities and settlements with my resources, I trade for them. That's something I think has really helped me win games throughout my Catan Universe experience, as I did decide to block the Mpiccolo at the 8 lumber, trying to prevent him from getting the longest road. What would be the worst case scenario if you were Mpiccolo right now for you to have as development cards?
That's a really good question. I'm not entirely sure. I was thinking about saying just like 3 victory points, since those are like pretty useless, but at the same time it's not that useless since you can fly under the radar. It depends how aware people are, since if you haven't played your dev cards in several turns, they're going to the other players are going to eventually realize, oh, you have 3 victory points. And the issue with other players realizing you have 3 victory points is like, oh, he's at 6 points. But in reality, you're at 6 points, but with garbage production. So that makes you like a target, but like a really, really like bad target to go for, since you can't really win. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or like it's hard to accelerate faster, like what you're saying. It's hard to get tempo when you have 3 settlements on board and have all 3 of them are victory points.
Definitely.
I like victory points, although like they're good. Getting them early in the game is very, very bad.
Okay, a crucial trade just happened, as I was able to trade in a brick to Mpiccolo, which is the resource he lacks the most, and I was able to get a brick. I was able to get the lumber, I guess. I don't know for sure, but now I'm able to build a road to the lumber port, and let's see what Mpiccolo will be able to do with that. If he is able to build a settlement on the 3-to-1 port, that is a terrible trade by me, but let's have a look at what will happen. Now Nuke X has rolled the 7. He has a couple of options to block. He probably won't block his own stuff this early in the game to prevent me from doing something. So I think the 6 wheat is a really great blocking target, as you target both my game plan a little bit and also Mpiccolo's.
Yes. Actually, interesting spot, but in Nuke, if in your spot, I wouldn't mind trying to table talk Nuke X to block my own 6 wheat. And the reason why I would be more comfortable with telling Nuke X, like, it's just block the 6 wheat, is because you have your own 8 wheat open and you have the city on it. And if you're tracking Piccolo's cards and realize he doesn't have any wheat, then yeah, I'd try to table talk him to block my own wheat anyways, even more. Since I have another wheat spot open, and if Mpiccolo doesn't have any wheat, then that hurts him even more.
Yeah.
But him getting on the 10 ore doesn't hurt at all, since it doesn't hurt you at all. So I think with the perspective of you, Purple, getting the 10 ore blocked is good.
Definitely. So I wouldn't be too afraid of like getting the wheat blocked, like you said, and also the 10 ore is fine, and so not much. I didn't necessarily need the table talk, and if I don't need to table talk, then I prefer not to. It does put a lot of attention on you when you are talking the whole time, something I try to minimize at certain points when I can. When I need to, I will, for sure.
Just a random thought. I don't agree with Mpiccolo taking from Nuke X and not taking from you. I think when you're the player with the 5A10 and the city, I think I would consider you the bigger threat and not Nuke X the bigger threat.
Yeah, maybe he was scared of him getting to the wheat board. Since
Yeah.
I made sure, okay, I'm not going for this wheat board, I'm committing to the lumber board.
Maybe he was also fishing for a resource. So once again, he's not here, so I don't know his reasoning. But in general, in terms of threat level, I would consider you a much bigger threat level than Nuke X is.
Also, something you gotta keep in mind is that Mpiccolo is quite close to getting the longest road. Nuke X is also competing for that. But on the other hand, I'm as well, so that's not really something that could impact your decision that much.
I think that you rolling a 7 once again on your turn was very, very good, as you force Mpiccolo to reveal more of his dev cards, or like get more information. Since once again, if you block Mpiccolo on his 8 wood, if he doesn't play a night card on his turn, there's something wrong. Like those are either monopolies or victory points, or at least you know that they're not night cards for sure, since you know Mpiccolo would play his night cards. So I think you rolling a 7 is very, very good, as you force Piccolo to play to reveal his dev cards.
Yeah, like that's the to go to thought when someone, okay, he doesn't have a knight, he must have monopoly or a victory point. But something I try to notice with that thought is that it's pretty dangerous when someone has road building, as you're not that focused on someone pulling out a road building and actually cutting you off to a certain spot. Like the focus, your mind's focus would be on the monopoly, but that also tends to happen. So that's kind of scary sometimes. But yeah, definitely agree.
Yes, I agree.
10 was rolled, which is a key resource in this game, especially when I get the lumber port. It will be really huge for me, but also for Kinsey, as he needs to get the city fast to the 9-5-10, for Mpiccolo as well, as he needs the development cards to get keep winning this race. So we have a really, really, really close game going forward. Kinsey, Nuke X, myself are all at 4 visible victory points, and Mpiccolo is at 3, but with 2 development cards in hand, and also a big claim to the biggest army already. So that's really, really interesting. So who do you think will win at this point in the game? A lot of players have great potential for the longest road. I guess we'll have to find out. Leave it in the comments below if you want to. Again, thank you DylLighted for helping me out on this video. I'd like to see you on the next one. Have a great day.